Every club.
Every day.
The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Brighton podcast. We are brought to you by the Global Sports Podcasting Network. And today I am on the crossover with Nathan from the Wolves podcast. So we are going to be previewing the game at the weekend where Brighton are going to be hosting Wolves. Let's get straight into it, Nathan. I'm a bit concerned because obviously you guys haven't picked up points. I just had to get that in there, sorry. But I feel
early low blow.
Yeah, that's it. I feel like Brighton, when they come up against teams like Wolves and teams that are going to really work hard, maybe not your fancy teams like Arsenal. It feels like we turn up for like the Arsenals, but the teams that are really going to work hard and press us, it always seems like it could be a slippery banana skin for us.
Yeah. I think, to be honest, I was going to say the same about Wolves. I think over the past sort of few years, we've done quite well against top six teams where we've always fancied ourselves to get points, and then maybe against teams that haven't got as much of or haven't got that top six status, we haven't always performed as well. And I think, to be fair, our last few games against you guys have been quite poor from a Wolves perspective. So, yeah, fingers crossed from my point of view that changes this weekend. But I know you guys are off the back of a really good away win, so I'm sure confidence is running pretty high.
Yeah, no, the morale's pretty high, but it always gets humbled quite quickly when we face a side that we think we're going to win, beat, but then obviously it doesn't happen always. Obviously, it's been a tough season for you guys. From your perspective, how's it been? How's it gone?
Yeah, really tough, mate. I think from first 8 games having 1 point, that says probably all that you need to know from how we're feeling. That there have been small bits of positives throughout those first 8 games, but at the same time, there's been some really worrying performances. So we're really hoping to see a big change, and I think we started seeing something a little bit more positive last weekend against Manchester City. I think we put on an okay defensive display, which is a lot better than what we'd done in our previous game where we conceded 5 against Brentford, which was just absolutely crazy. So hopefully we're bringing some of that defensive solidity into this Brighton game as well. But yeah, overall the season so far has been quite honestly an absolute shambles, and we're really hoping to see that change for the better very soon.
Yeah, no, I can see. So obviously, there's been some really close games where you've just lost out, and then there's been some tricky performances as well. But from your perspective, what would you put it down to? Because I know you've got a few players out. Mascara's injured, and Huang is out as well, I believe.
Yeah.
Would you put it down on injuries, or?
I think it would be a bit cheap of me to put it down to injuries. I think if we actually look at our performances, even when Mascara was, fit, of course he is a big loss because he started the season very well. However, we still only picked up 1 point when he was fit as well. So let's not put it down to that. And Huang this season has been underperforming. It's not nice to see him go off injured, but he was off injured, I think, on international break or something. But he really hasn't had a good start to this season in a Wolves shirt. So what would I put it down to? I mean, we've been trying to figure this out over on Daily Wolves, but to be honest, so far it's just we've been inconsistent throughout the whole 90 minutes. We haven't been able to hold or string together whole performances, and then when we have, turns out we sort of concede a last minute goal against City, or miss out on those minor details, and that's the nature of the Premier League, really. If we don't, it's small margins, isn't it? So I don't know if that even answers your question, to be honest. I have no idea why we are bottom with 1 point. I wish we weren't, but hey-o.
Yeah, no, it is a tough one to sort of just pinpoint it, because it is a lot of things that happen and change in football. That's why we love it, I guess. It's unpredictable. Yeah. 1 week you could be doing this, next week it could be shambles.
Yeah, definitely.
And I was going to ask you, so going into the season, what were your What were your expectations going into the season?
I think they were they weren't to be bottom with 1 point. That's fair to say. I think the initial expectation was for Gary O'Neill to kick on because this previous season he didn't have a pre-season with the players. He kind of was put in with sort of 5 games before our opening game away to United, I think it was last year. This year he's had a full pre-season. Backroom staff have had a full pre-season to set the squad up, and we failed to replace two of our best players. I mean, we sold Max Kilman and sold Pedro Neto in the summer. They're two obviously big losses, but they came in for big money. We did manage to add a few players sort of going forwards, to be fair. Strand Larson coming in, Carlos Forbes, who have both looked fairly positive so far, and brought in Andre in midfield, who I think has been very good for us. But defensively, we really didn't make any new acquisitions of note, apart from a youngster. So that was quite worrying from the start. And I think that then kind of set the tone a little bit. And I guess I felt a little bit worried, but I thought that I wanted to trust. You always want to be a little bit more positive, don't you, before a new season? So I think my outlook was that, yes, let's kick on. Let's try and aim for a sort of top half, top 10. Why not? It's something that we've done before. Why can't we do it again? But yeah, it's not really gone that way at all. Unlike you guys, I guess I could reverse the question to you here. But yeah, you guys have been absolutely flying, haven't you?
Yeah, it's been a really good start, and we obviously got humbled a little bit at Chelsea away, a little bit naive in the way we sort of approach the game. But overall, the teams we've played and the points we've picked up, just looking at the point at Arsenal, coming back from behind against Tottenham, it's been a really positive start. And I think a lot of us are quietly optimistic about maybe one of the conference positions. But again, it's a long season, and it's just like we have to get over the Christmas period. If we're still there and thereabouts, then perhaps it's still there. But again, it's really unpredictable. And I think the main thing about Brighton fans is they value just the stability of the club before anything else. So it's like we try not to get too carried away with what's going on and who's playing really well, because next season we could lose up 3 players.
Yeah.
But it's been a really positive start.
Yeah.
Right. We are going to go for a short break, and you're going to hear from our partners at Zencastr.
Do you have a story to tell that the world needs to hear? Have you struggled with reaching new audiences who engage with your story? It might be time for you to start a podcast. Let me tell you about a platform we use here at Global Sports Podcast Network. Zencastr makes it easier to start a high-quality podcast built for growth from day one. With 4K video recorded from your phone and AI editing that automatically moves ums, ahs, you knows, and 22 other speech patterns. Zencastr makes it super easy to start a podcast that sounds great. Ready to tell your story? Check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr.
And welcome back to the Daily Brighton podcast. So this segment, we're going to just preview the game. Let's break it down a little bit and talk about maybe who are the danger men, or where the game's going to be won or lost. And I want to start with you, Nathan. What do you think about Brighton? Who do you think are the dangerous players that you might need to watch out for?
I think there's a few, but one that's really, really impressed me over the past few games has been Georgino Rutter. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I think I was really impressed with him from the bits that I saw against Newcastle. I mean, I think he's obviously came from Leeds with this reputation of being a really good sort of playmaker and setting up a load of goals and stuff in the Championship, but he's his overall work rate is just insane. From what I was watching, like he's just an absolute bully at times in midfield, and I think that is something that is going to be an interesting one to watch, to be fair, because our midfield is of that type. They're kind of all that. They could all play that number 6 role, and they're somewhat defensive minded, or at least very good defensively. So I think that's going to be an interesting balance. But yeah, Rutter's one that I would worry about a little bit. And then, Danny Welbeck always seems to pop up with goals recently as well. So I'm slightly worried about him too. But I'd say I'm more worried about Ruta, because he really is that sort of supply chain through to the striker, isn't he?
Yeah, and I find it really interesting. You've mentioned about your three midfielders, obviously very comfortable number sixes, and then
Yeah.
going beyond that, it feels like with the back three, there's not much creativity in midfield. Do you think that's where the issues have come from in terms of like lack of goals?
To be fair, I think that potentially, I think it's a valid point, but we have been shipping so many goals. I don't actually know how many it is now. I don't know if I have a feeling it's like 21, 22, something like that, maybe more. Goals that we've conceded in 8 games, which is a huge amount, and that's something that can't go on if we want to be a Premier League team next season. So I think the decision to go 3 at the back or 5 at the back was the correct one. We definitely looked a lot better against City defensively. But naturally, if you do play 3 defensive midfielders in front of a back 5, it's a very, very defensive lineup. You're not going to see as much of the ball as you might want to. That being said, out of those 3 midfielders, I do think they do have some sort of they do have quality going forwards. Obviously, they're not just single-minded defensive midfielders. I think João Gomez and Lamina are quite good at arriving late into the box at times, but it's just about the tone of play, I think, because we've been conceding so much. We're starting games almost already on the back foot. Naturally, you're going to do that against the likes of City, but we've done it against the likes of Brentford as well. So I think there's a real nervousness and lack of confidence around our defensive stuff. So we want to be solid first and foremost, and then we're hoping to catch teams on the break. And we did that against City. Our first opening goal I thought was quite decent. So yeah, at the minute it's Cunha and Strand Larsen that are our attacking outlets, with hopefully some support from the wing backs. That's kind of how it's been always set up in the previous game, and that's how I'd predict it to be set up against you guys at the weekend as well.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you mentioned Lamina as well, because I think he's a very good player. And I'm looking at our midfield. We've got quite a few youngsters in there who, I mean, Belieber's quite robust and he can battle a bit, but I'm worried about the likes of Jack Hinshelwood and whether or not I think there's a chance we could get out run in midfield and just sort of struggle to match how powerful your midfield is. But one particular player I want to highlight as well is Larsen, who's sort of game by game, I think, is looking more comfortable and sort of looking the striker that you probably want to see.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I think he's had a really tough hand from the start of the season. He's been dealt a really, really tough hand. He's in the team that's conceding loads of goals and he's not getting many opportunities. But despite that, his performances have been overall very good for a striker who's often isolated up front and having to do a lot of legwork. And when chances have fallen to him, he's finished them off. And so far this season, I've been really impressed with him. And I think that if we see some more crosses go into the box and keep feeding him with some balls, I think he can definitely be a point of difference. And something that I was really impressed with him in the game against City was he was out of the game for so long because of how much possession. I mean, we know what City are like. It's honestly like watching paint dry at times, the amount of passes they do between their centre halves. But after doing all of that running, he still, when we had possession, was quite, I'd say, efficient. Like, he didn't have it very often, but when he did, he was linking up fairly well with Cunha. He was using his body well. He's a big lad. So I think that he really allows some of our other players to, or hopefully will allow some of our other players to really come into their own. And I think this season, in my opinion, he's going to be vital in letting Cunha do his thing. So, yeah, been really impressed with him.
Yeah, and just another thing on Larsen as well. We've been caught out so much this season by playing this really high line. Is he quick? Do you reckon he'll give us a lot of trouble?
I think he's not as quick off the mark as someone like Cunha or some of our wingers or wing backs. But when he gets going, I think he's fairly quick. I think when he gets into full stride, I think he's decently quick. But to be fair, we haven't really seen him make too many sort of in behind runs on the shoulder of defenders. He's done it once or twice, and I think the one time he did do it, I'm thinking about I can't remember which game it was, but he broke down the line really well and crossed the ball in. We scored. I think it was Lamina's goal against. I can't remember who it was. Newcastle, I believe. Yeah. So I think he's got that ability to do it. But I'd say with that element of play and you guys playing a really high line, I think players like Cunha, Carlos Forbes, if he gets involved, would be a little bit more dangerous because they do look to get into that space beyond sort of your centre halves. And I think Cunha is one that can definitely hurt teams in that way.
Yeah, and for the overall play of the game, do you think it would be a case of Wolves would be battling to sort of try and control the game, or do you think you sit back and maybe play off the break?
I would be surprised if we sit back from the start. I don't think Gary O'Neill, after the previous performance, which was an okay performance against City, considering the circumstances, I don't think he wants to go all out. I think it'd be a fairly balanced performance, but when we have the ball, I really hope that the instruction is to try and impose ourselves on the game. And as you said, I think there's definitely an opportunity to do that with the midfield matchups that are going on, which is really why I think that Ruta is a really important player in the game. And if he has a good game, it could be the difference for you guys, or if he has a bad one, for us as well. Because I think that he brings an element of physicality to your midfield that when I look at that, I think, he's quick, he's good on the ball, he's also really, really aggressive, and so he's not going to be, sort of bullied off the ball from our free midfielders who at times can bully other midfielders. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you talked about that guy, Danny Welbeck, as well, who's unfortunately, I think he's going to miss this one because he's injured. So It could be your day.
It could be our day indeed. It could be. So who would be his replacement up front then, do you think?
So Evan Ferguson's just come back from injury.
Okay.
So possibly, I think possibly Evan Ferguson starts and then Ruta will play off him.
Okay.
But yeah, it could be sort of a bit of Hertzer could sort of switch it up as well and perhaps put Ruta as the 9 and
interesting.
get a different 10 in.
Yeah, and what?
But yeah, it'll be.
Go on.
No, you go.
Okay. I was going to ask, what do you see as your kind of main threat to the Wolves side this weekend? Who do you think or what is it about this Brighton team that I guess we should be worried about?
I think with Batoma coming back, and I'm hoping Minte starts because Ruta will play down the middle. I think where Brighton will find joy will be that spaces between, if you do go over back three, that spaces between the wing back and the wider centre backs. If we can get them isolated with our wingers, I mean, Matoma's electric and there's always quality at the end of what he does. I think that could be our sort of route to success. But again, the midfield battle is going to be really interesting. Really need Ruta to sort of help out in there. But I think that's our route to success.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that as well, actually, because I would also say that defensively, we as a back five looked better because our centre halves or our wide centre halves had that support from the fullbacks. I think that's something that we've really struggled in so far this season, is when playing a back four and our centre halves have been isolated. Dawson's been brilliant. Last season he was fantastic for us, but he's I think he's 34 now. Even though I do still call him Ballon Dawson, I think he at times in a one-on-one scenario can be a bit leggy. Totti Gomez, I really like his attitude. I like all the effort that he puts into his tackles, but I mean, bless him, on the ball at times he looks like he's playing with Doc Martens on. So there's situations like this where I think if those players get isolated, we are in trouble. So having a back five, hopefully from our point of view, our wing backs can stay nice and close to those centre halves and not allow your wingers inside of them. Because I do think, I think you're absolutely right. Mitoma's done it before against us, where he had the liberty of the whole of Molineux last time you guys came to us, and he ran the whole length of the pitch pretty much unchallenged. So I'm really hoping that there's no repeat of that.
Yeah, no, that's it. And I think another way perhaps we might see joy is if you, I don't know, if you tend to play out from the back. At the moment, we're pressing really aggressively. Actually, that could be a good thing for us and also a bad thing, because if you go
Yeah.
long, you could catch yourself. But yeah, we press quite aggressively if you play out from the back.
We haven't really played out from the back much this season, and when we have, it's looked very shaky. I do think that some of that was down to the fact that Sam Johnston, who's came in the summer, isn't the greatest with his feet. It has been nervy at times when he's been in goal, and then, as I mentioned, Totti Gomez on the ball is wobbly at best. So I think that with a back five, we may, because Dawson's quite good on the ball, we may look to try and play out from the back. But I think that, as you say, that it might be a better approach for us to go more direct and try and get the ball as quickly as possible up to Cunha and Strand Larsen, because I think Strand Larsen he does really well with his back to goal, and if he's able to get some flick ons and sort of hold the ball up there, and he's got players around him like Cunha, like Forbes, I think that's when we can create some sort of issues for you guys.
Nice. Right, we're going to go for another short break, and we'll be back after with some score predictions.
This podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football, and fantasy football. A unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make us your first listen every day. Global Sports Podcast Network. Every club, every day.
Hello and welcome back to the Daily Brighton podcast. So we're going to talk a little bit about your expectations of for the rest of the season, and also I want to hear some score predictions at the end, Nathan. But let's jump straight in. What are your feelings at the moment? Do you think that this is just a moment where Wolves need to just dig in and then you pick up your points when you see, the likes of Ipswich and just make it, or is it panic stations?
It's very close to panic stations, if I'm honest. I think the one small positive that we can see as a positive, hopefully, is our run of fixtures coming up. Our next 10 games, we should look at them and think that we can get points out of all 10 of those games. We've got within the next 5 games, we've got Palace at home, Southampton at home, and Bournemouth at home. With obviously you guys away this weekend, as well as Fulham away in between those fixtures. So we should look at those and think that, those 3 home games are must wins at this stage in the season, considering our start as well. And to be fair, every away game is as well. We must be getting points on the board. So yeah, it's very close to panic stations, and I think Gary O'Neill's been under a little bit of pressure. He's been lucky in a way with the run of fixtures, because it's almost the media and people talking about it has been, Wolves have been unlucky. They've had a tough run of fixtures, unlike some of the others that are down there. But we can't use that. Let's not pull wool over our eyes. We can't use that as an excuse for the performances that we've seen sometimes. So yeah, small positive change of fixtures. Hopefully we can get some points together and get on a decent run, because it's much needed at the minute. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, nice. And Brighton are obviously on the complete other end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
With, I've just now realised, when you haven't thought about, having a tough time in the Premier League, just now realise it's still a thing. That's
just rubbing it in there again, mate. Thanks very much.
I'm sorry, mate. I had to. I need to stop taking top 10 for granted. I'm literally speaking to the other boys, and I was like, if we finish 10th, that's a failure. Things like that. But that's actually a good finish, boy.
Yeah, I think it's funny how the 2 clubs have been on different trajectories over the past few years. I mean, when we got promoted back to the Prem, within 3 seasons being back, we finished 7th twice and got to the Europa League. And then, since then, it's kind of been a slow decline, as sort of Nuno left and our new managers have come in. whereas you guys have kind of slowly been on the other way up. Obviously, your European run as well, and so yeah, it's interesting how things change, and I think it's just a reflection of how competitive the Premier League is. And when one team drops its standards, there's someone else who's ready to go and take a European spot and sometimes dominate that space. Yeah, I've been really impressed with Brighton over the last couple of years. One of my close mates is a Brighton fan, unfortunately for me, and so he reminds me quite regularly of how well they're getting on. But yeah, what would you sort of attribute your success down to this season? Obviously, you've got your new manager that's come in. Is he the sole reason to it, or are there a few other things going on?
In terms of Hertzler, I think we're still learning a lot about what he wants the players to do. Like the playing style has changed, but not dramatically. And I got a little bit worried because when we played against Chelsea again, we just didn't show them. We didn't show them any respect, and really was stubborn with that high line. And by showing them respect, what I mean is not necessarily just parking the bus, sitting deep, but just spotting that they keep getting it over our back four. Let's just drop a little bit, change something. So yeah, that really I was really concerned by that. But then we went to Newcastle. Just fast forward in a couple of weeks, went to Newcastle, and it was a bit more of a robust performance, a bit more smash and grab. And from there, that's when I think we're starting to learn a little bit more that he's willing to change and tweak things to help us through. But yeah, I think our main successes are Danny Welbeck's been just absolutely unbelievable in what he's doing. And I was speaking to the other boys on the Daily Brighton. His hold-up play is probably contributed more than that his actual goals, to be honest, because he's just, I don't know, turned the leaf somehow, and he looks a bit of a different player. So he's going to be a big miss at the weekend.
Yeah, I really, really rate him. I think that it's almost like you can see how almost wise he is in his play now, because he's obviously not got that speed that he used to have when he was before all of his injuries and when he was at United and Arsenal, and where he's relying so much on being able to just be more physical than the defenders. Now he's got so much more to his game, and some of the goals that he's scoring, he's taken so well. And I tell you what, if you'd have told me that about 3 or 4 years ago, I would have laughed in your face. So yeah, absolutely fair play. I really, really do rate him.
Yeah, no, he's unreal, that guy Welbs. But before we go, I just wanted to ask you as well, because a lot of Brighton's success, we've said, is mainly down to our recruitment. Whereas I look at Wolves, you've lost a lot of players. Would you say, the sort of trajectory going downwards is down to the recruitment team not sort of selecting the right players?
It's a difficult one at Wolves at the minute, because a lot of people are putting it down to Fosun, who are the owners of Wolves, and what they're doing. But then at the same time, our sporting director, Matt Hobbs, has come out and said that everything that happened in the summer was completely planned for, and that this is where they expect it to be, which is quite worrying, because at the same time, Gary O'Neill, when I say expected to be, I mean with the squad that we have. So, the centre halves that we have, I don't think they expect it to be bottom. But Gary O'Neill's come out in press conferences saying, it'll be a bit of a risk to play a back three because we've only got 3 fit centre halves. And sort of as Wolves fans, we go, well, Gary, your mate Matt Hobbs has been saying that this was the plan all along, to only have 4, senior centre halves in the squad. So it's quite worrying, because that's quite a stark sort of like disagreement or contradiction, I'd say. And that's where, as Wolves fans at the minute, it's kind of like, we don't know if it's exactly the recruitment, whether it's poor quality of it or from the owners, there's no investment. It's tough to say, because I think we finished the transfer in a net profit on sort of money coming in to money going out. So it's worrying when that's happening, because you do wonder, are the owners trying to cash in? I don't know. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting to say that, and I hope O'Neill keeps his job. I do like him, to be fair, but he looks like a very stressed man at the moment.
Yeah, you would like it, because we're bottom with 1 point. I think it helps every other team in the division, doesn't it? Let's hope that let's hope that he can turn things around. Because on a personal note, I do quite like Gary O'Neill as well, and I do hope he can turn this around. But yeah.
Right, before we go, score predictions. I'll let you go first as the away team.
I'm going to go for 0-0. It's a really, really boring prediction, but we are due a clean sheet, and I'm really hoping that we can get one. I would love nothing more than a boring draw away. I think that would build a bit of confidence. I just don't want to concede again.
Okay. Right, I'm going to go for a 2-2. I think it's going to be, a tough battle in that midfield, and Wolves get a point.
Okay, well, mate, I really hope we do. I really hope we do.
You take that. Right, Nathan, it's been lovely to speak to you. Hopefully, Brighton get the points. And I called a draw, but I'm still hoping. There's a little bit of hope that Brighton get the points.
Yeah, same here. Same here. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Right, guys, thanks for listening. That is our time.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.